What is your worst dating humiliation story? So I'd been seeing a girl pretty casually when I was in college, and she happened to be from my hometown too. Over winter break, we were going to see a movie, and she convinced me to just meet her at the theater instead of picking her up. Normally, I would just refuse, but I was tired. She lived really close to the theater, and our hometown is small and relatively sleepy. When I first rolled into the garage, a car flew backward out of a parking spot right in front of me. Instead of leaving, it drove deeper into the garage, and as I followed it, I noted that the make and model of the car were identical to those of the girl I was meeting. Being the clever guy I am, I just followed the car so I could park right next to it and show off how clever I was. When it did finally park, I parked next to it and looked over so I could see how love-stricken she would be by my timing, only to realize that the vehicle was piloted by two young African American gentlemen. I felt silly but shrugged it off as a funny coincidence that I could tell my date and got out of my car. As I went to leave the garage, the doppelganger car flew backward out of its spot again, this time bumping into a parked car before speeding out of the garage. I started to memorize the license plate for later chivalry, but when I noticed there was no damage to the parked car, I gave up. I was late for my date after all. I got to the box office and she wasn't there, so I called her to see if she had already gotten tickets, but there was no answer. I assumed she was on the road, bought 2 tickets, and went inside. I occupied myself at the snack stand for a few minutes before calling again, worried she might be late for the flick. This time, a boy answered, stunned and slowly coming to a scary realization. I asked, "Is der pet there?" To which the boy hung up. And that's when it all clicked. I sprinted back to the garage, called the police, and went hunting for the car. Luckily, as I explained my situation to the police, it became apparent that they had already found der pet, as they were much better cops than I am a date. It turns out that she had in fact arrived first at the garage, and on getting out of her car, she was approached by 2 boys who told her to get back in the car and give them the keys. That's when I arrived, followed them into the garage, and watched them drive away, totally oblivious to my date lying in the back seat of her own car. They took her to a nearby ATM, made her draw the limit on all her bank and credit cards, and left her in the empty parking lot where she was able to flag down someone and call the cops. The 2 boys were caught later that night at a gas station just outside of town. Now, this first story is a lot more scary than it is humiliating. But also, I'd be super ticked off if I was derpet and my date is such a dense dude that he didn't realize sooner that something sketchy was up. But also, it's kinda sweet how the dude thought it was all a fun game to play before their actual date. I'd love to know if they actually went out again though, lol. Story 2. I've been rejected more times than I can count in a variety of horrific ways, but this one was the best. I was leaving a club on a Friday night and I met a girl on the elevator on the way out. We got to chatting and she told me that she was visiting from out of town with her friends and that she was just there for the weekend. Well, one of her friends met a guy and she didn't want to disturb them, so she was going home. I told her that I was going to a different club and I invited her to come. To my surprise, we went. So we had what seemed to be an amazing night. We drank, we danced, and we held hands, and she was really pretty too. We talked about life, careers, relationships, etc. I told her I did stand-up comedy for fun, and I told her to Google me if she wanted to see me. She seemed like she was really into me and everything was going great. I walked her back to her hotel at like 4 in the morning, and suddenly she started going into a tirade about how she's not easy. Mind you, I literally hadn't made any moves on her at all. I know that's hard to believe, but I didn't do anything. I suspected that she was just used to this being the part of the night where the guy started becoming a jerk, so she automatically snapped into a rage mode even though it was undeserved. But she still gave me her number and begged me to text her the next night. I am not making this up, she kept asking me to text her the next day. We planned on going out together the next night, her friends and my friends. I also gave her a breakfast recommendation so she could go with her friends. I texted her the next day and asked her how breakfast was, and she said that she didn't go to the place I recommended. We texted back and forth a little more. Late afternoon, I texted her, "Do you want to meet up?" There was no answer for like 3 hours, so I figured she wasn't interested. But just as a last resort, I texted back, "Haha, guess not." No response again. Okay, mission canceled. I went out with my friends and I met other girls. I woke up in the morning and saw my phone. It turns out the girl texted me at 3 in the morning with the meanest text you've ever read in your life. I don't remember the exact wording, but it said something like, "You would think it would be used to rejection considering how unfunny your comedy is. Ha ha ha, loser." It was such an absurdly mean and ridiculous text that it didn't even hurt my feelings. It was clear that this girl was just damaged. I actually felt really bad for her. Story 3. She was my first serious girlfriend in high school. We met at church and we had known each other for a couple of years before we started dating. Her life had become pretty messy. Her parents were going through a trial separation and she needed an emotional anchor in her life. Someone steady and reasonable. Why she chose me? I don't know. Maybe I looked like I had it all together, but what does a teenager do? It didn't help that I complained about her habit of hugging everyone. Sure, she was friendly, but it was getting to the point of being ridiculous. When I complained, she got upset. So she dumped me on Christmas Day. I was crushed, completely heartbroken, but over the next couple of weeks, I started pulling the pieces together again. Then she called me crying and said she'd made a terrible mistake and wanted to get back together with me again. And for a month, it was fine. I was very happy again, but out of nowhere, she dumped me again on Valentine's Day. This time, I was only very sad, not crushed. I started building scar tissue. She called me again about a month later and started hinting that she wanted to get back together again. I shut that down cold and left her crying and yelling at me as I hung up the phone, and we didn't talk again for 5 years. During the interim, I had joined the Air Force, went through training, served 2 tours in Korea, and was starting out a tour in Okinawa, Japan. I had just gotten married to a wonderful Korean woman. And then the phone rang. It was my old girlfriend. She'd got my number from my mother and called to tell me her sob story of how she just got divorced from her husband of 3 years and wanted to know if I was interested in her. I shut her down. Then I told my wife what had just happened. The next time she called, my wife answered and gave her an earful. Who dumps people on Valentine's Day? Who dumps their boyfriend on Christmas? You are a very bad person. Stop calling my husband. I still chuckle when I remember that. And she didn't call back after that either. Now there's a keeper because she's absolutely right. Who dumps people on Christmas Day and then again on Valentine's Day? You think once is evil enough, but to do it again? Did the ex just not want to give him presents on those days or something? Story 4. Second year university, I asked out a girl that I had been crushing on for a year and a bit, right after Christmas this year. She replied in what I take for a positive manner. I'm very flattered, thank you. Of course, I would love to once classes start. Needless to say, I was ecstatic. So classes resumed and we set a date. The day of, she had an excuse, a project further behind than she anticipated. Okay, fine. So we rescheduled. The rescheduled date came up and passed with a new excuse. She slept in and now won't be able to make it because she has a makeup class at that time. Again, understandable. She rescheduled once more thinking, third time's the charm. It wasn't. I'm pretty clueless sometimes, but I'm also determined. She was so nice and some very naive parts of me believed her excuses were real and not just blowing me off. I rescheduled with this gorgeous girl a total of 12 times before we got something to work. After a Herculean effort, I got the date and it was going not too shabbily. We had the same interests, she laughed a bit and I laughed. I won't lie, I was by no means suave or a Lothario, but I was holding my own in my own eyes. The date ended and we agreed to hang out again soon. However, the same occurrence occurs, excuse after excuse. Finally, one night I was just chatting with her via text and she told me, oh, haha, yeah, I don't get nervous around people because it just isn't worth it. I don't really get attached to people and I'm pretty much a hermit. A few more texts later, she spelled it out. She proceeded to tell me she's not interested in dating as a concept in general. I still saw her and still chatted. She was still really friendly, really gorgeous, and essentially the girl who walked out of my dreams. She's still not interested. Story 5. I started working out at the beginning of the summer with one of the most beautiful girls I'd ever met. We hit it off right away and started hanging out all the time. She revealed to me that she had a boyfriend who she lived with, but they had been having a lot of problems and he was away for the summer and things were getting worse all the time. I helped her through her relationship and she admitted that she had feelings for me and said all these incredible things to me about how she had never met anyone like me and that she was falling for me, etc. Eventually, after some time, she and her boyfriend broke up and we slowly started seeing each other and sleeping together. And everything was perfect. We had amazing conversations and we would spend the night together holding each other. It was so amazing. We never really took the step into being in a relationship because things were still rocky with her ex and she had a lot of stress trying to find a new apartment and everything, so we were taking it slow. Last week, I went away for one night to see a concert in a nearby city. When I got back, she was super distant. It turns out my quote unquote best friend, who had known this entire time that we were seeing each other and that she had feelings for me and vice versa, asked her on a date since she was quote unquote single, and she said yes. Now she's telling me that they've had feelings for each other for a while and that I was just some kind of rebound or something. I feel like crap that I've been betrayed by two people who I thought were my best friends. No, 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 no. This is one of those blessings in disguise kind of things. Imagine if they had gotten together first, and then that girl still pulls off the same stunt eventually. That would hurt so much more. Story 6. When I was in high school, there was this girl I was totally into. She had it all, including the attitude, but I didn't find out about that until later. I asked her out, and she stood there, mulling it over for a little while, then said yes. I was pretty stoked, mostly because I was young and an idiot. I took all of my money from my allowance and my paper route, and I got a cab to take me to her place and pick her up. When I asked her where she wanted to go, she said the Keg, which was totally extravagant for our age. The waiter came to take our order, and she grinned maliciously at me and said, "I'll have the surf and turf with a whole lobster, not a half." "Are you sure, ma'am?" the waiter asked her. "He's paying. The date was his idea. I'm way out of his league, so he's going to have to step up his game if he thinks he's worthy of my time." The waiter shook his head and turned to me. "I'll have the same," I told him. He shrugged and walked away. The rest of the time, the girl told me about how disappointed she was in my choice of clothes, cab company, how I was such a loser at school, and how my friends were social bottom feeders, etc. I just ate my steak and lobster quietly, then excused myself to go to the bathroom. She was almost giddy as I left the table. "Need some quiet time? Gonna cry? Show me what a broke loser you are?" I called my mom to come and get me, washed my hands in the bathroom, thanked the hostess, and left the restaurant. Sadly, she didn't have to wash dishes to pay for our dinners because her father came and bailed her out. Man, that is rough and evil. Hopefully, he learned some valuable lessons about picking better dates in the future, but can't blame the guy. Speaking of which, there is more interesting content coming your way, so please do hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It really does help me out. Story 7. I was bartending at this new gig I had just gotten. I'd only been there for a week or so, but there was this one guy who came in every couple of days. He was middle-aged, looked fairly well off, and was a decent-looking guy. Anyway, tonight was his birthday, and he was supposed to be having a drink at this bar with this girl before going out. I was talking to him about it, and he seemed pretty excited as he really liked her. She was apparently all gung-ho for it and had known about it for weeks. Anyway, he had been here for 20 minutes or so and was starting to look somewhat confused. I saw him trying via phone to figure out where she was and what was going on. Asking him about it, he responded by saying that she was not ready to leave yet, and a few other things about getting dressed or something. He ordered a drink. Half an hour later, she still wasn't there, and he was looking steadily more dejected. He ordered another drink. He waited, I kid you not, a total of 3 hours for this woman before putting his head in his hands for a minute. I turned to talk to some other guests to give him some privacy. He called me over a minute later and asked for a shot of Patron. He never ordered shots. I accidentally poured him a double and only charged him for one of the drinks he had. The poor guy really seemed to care about the woman, and it seemed like she had totally ruined his birthday. I didn't know what else to do, so I wished him good luck. I hope he looks happier the next time he's in. Story 8. I lived in a small college town attending a research school with a 7-to-1 male-to-female ratio. My first date from OkCupid picked me up, and we had lunch and a drink at Applebee's. She looked larger than she did in the pictures, but that wasn't really the problem. After the meal, she suggested we go to her friend's place to smoke and watch cheesy 80s horror movies, so obviously I was game. We went to her friend's place, and everything was going smoothly. Her friends went to bed eventually, and we started cuddling on the couch. Then she started telling me that she had a narrow window of opportunity for starting a family because she had some sort of health issue. She wanted to be a parent so badly. One child was all she needed to give her life purpose, and so on and so on. Being a bit out of it, I didn't catch on immediately. Then she started telling me about how I probably had good genes. I'm in Mensa. And I wouldn't have to even see the kid and how she would handle everything alone, etc. I was taken aback. I told her I didn't ever want to have kids, let alone with someone I had just met. She started getting upset, raising her voice, and asking me to leave at 2 a.m. in the middle of winter. I walked my tired self home for 7 miles. Again, another blessing in disguise. Imagine having to marry someone like that who just wants to use you to better her own gene pool. That's not the kind of baggage anyone wants to be carrying on their back because, married or not, that's still for life. Story 9. When I was a senior in high school, I was at a friend's party and met her brother's best friend. We hit it off right away and soon we started dating. I'd never had a very serious boyfriend before and our relationship moved pretty fast. However, about 4 months into our relationship, I moved to another state to go to college. He hadn't gone to college, but seeing me go away to school inspired him to better himself, and he started taking classes at a community college nearby. Before I left, we had a long conversation and decided to take a break for a while. However, for the first week I was gone, we still talked on the phone for hours every day. Then I got a call from him saying that his dad was sick and he was worried about him, that his family was stressing him out, and that maybe we shouldn't talk for a while so he could pull himself together. I understood and agreed as I had been relying on him and not getting to know anyone at my college. Then 2 days later, I got a Facebook message that basically said he'd met someone and they were getting serious, and he wanted to make sure everything was over between us. I'd left a week and a half before and we'd been broken up officially for less than 2 days. Story 10. I had a huge crush on this guy who lived about an hour away from my town, so anytime we'd hang out, I'd end up staying over. At first, it was partying, cuddling, and sleeping. After a while, it got more serious and I had several days off work, so we decided I'd stay over with him for around 4 days. The first day there, everything was normal. The second day was normal too. Then, instead of the regular routine, we slept together. The next day, he acted like I was some stranger in his house. He avoided eye contact and didn't talk to me. I was completely flabbergasted. Finally, I made him make eye contact with me and I asked, "Hey, have you just completely lost interest in me now?" His response was, "You're way too good of a girl for me. You'll find someone better. But yes, I've just lost the chemistry." I just smiled, packed my stuff, and walked out to my car. He followed me and said, "You've taken this really well. I was expecting tears or something." I told him he wasn't worthy of my tears and to have a good day. Story 11. A guy told me to meet him at the movie theater for a date. I showed up at the time we had decided on, but he was an hour late, so we ended up missing the movie I wanted to see. I had to wait another hour to catch a good film, and it just so happened that he forgot his wallet. I paid for our tickets. I usually pay for just my own, as well as his drink, and enjoyed the movie. When it was over, I bid him farewell, but he told me he didn't have a ride home. I offered to drive him to the other side of town to his mother's house. It turns out he was 8 years older than me. I was 19 and met him in a junior college class. I thought we were around the same age. His license was taken away because of recurring DUIs, and he thought Star Trek was for quote-unquote for nerds. I dropped him off and he apologized for making me the woman gentleman. I closed my door, drove back home, and that was the end of that. The date sucked, but at least someone thinks I'm a gentleman. Story 13. I moved to a new office a few years ago, and within a month I was messing with a coworker. We went out a bunch, but we were never officially boyfriend-girlfriend. One weekend, she asked me to come to Reno for her birthday with a couple of friends. One of her long-lost guy friends met up with her while we were there, and she ignored me for basically the whole trip. The last night we were there, she was ignoring me at a club, so I decided to branch out and I met another woman. We had an amazing night, talking, drinking, and near the end of the night, getting to know each other better. Going home, my coworker and I drove from Reno to Idaho, about 9 hours. It was the most awkward drive ever, with a combo of her ranting and being silent the whole way. We worked together for another year before she actually moved away. I started a long-distance relationship with the clubbing chick, and she's now my wife of 2 years and mother of our daughter. It seems like most of these people dodged a bullet. Like I said, blessings in disguise. And I bet they're thanking their lucky stars that these dates ended early. Now, if you're up for more dating disasters, hop over to the next video. What's your WTF dating moment? Story 1, right off the bat, is insane. I'll see you there, and thank you for watching this one.